INFJs are often misunderstood when it comes to social behavior. They may appear friendly, warm, and even outgoing at times. They show up to parties, smile through group chats, and listen with care. But much of that behavior isn't natural. It's a performance, something they do to blend in, avoid conflict, or meet social expectations. Behind the scenes, many INFJs feel drained by this act. They enjoy deep one-on-one conversations and meaningful connections, but forced socializing and small talk leave them exhausted. Still, they go along with it for years. They smile through the birthday parties. They nod through the group dinners. They check in on people even when they're running on empty. But something changes. One day, the INFJ stops pretending. They realize they can't keep pushing themselves into social roles that don't fit. They stop saying yes when they want to say no. They stop showing up just because they feel obligated. And when that happens, the shift is noticeable. To others, it might seem sudden. To the INFJ, it's been building for a long time. In this video, we're going to walk through 6 clear things that happen when the INFJ stops pretending to be social. These changes aren't random. They're signs of growth, healing, and emotional clarity. Thing number 1. They disappear from group events. When INFJs stop pretending to be social, the first big change is that they simply stop showing up. They disappear from the parties, dinners, and casual hangouts they once attended just to be polite. They no longer force themselves to go to events that drain them. Instead, they choose silence and space. At first, this might confuse others. Why didn't you come? You used to always show up. People may not realize that the INFJ was never really comfortable in the first place. They went because they didn't want to disappoint anyone. But inside, they felt out of place. Now that they've stopped pretending, that feeling of being out of place becomes their reason not to go at all. Group events usually come with noise, chaos, and surface-level conversations. For an INFJ, that's a tough environment. They crave depth. They want real connection. But most group settings don't allow that. So they spend most of their time at these events feeling invisible or overstimulated. When they decide to stop attending, it's not because they're angry. It's because they're choosing peace. They're choosing to stop draining themselves for the sake of appearance. They realize that their energy is limited and they want to use it in places that feel safe. This doesn't mean they become isolated. It means they become selective. They might still see close friends, but in smaller settings. They might meet one person for coffee instead of joining a big dinner. They prefer quiet over loud and connection over performance. And if a group event doesn't offer that, they simply don't go. Over time, people stop asking them to come to every gathering. And that's okay with the INFJ. It's not rejection, it's relief. They feel lighter without the pressure to keep up appearances. Some people may judge them for this change. They might say the INFJ is antisocial or distant. But those people never understood what it cost the INFJ to show up in the first place. Now, the INFJ has stopped paying that emotional price. And the result is quiet freedom. They no longer disappear to punish others. They disappear to return to themselves. Thing number 2. They turn down invitations without apologies. Before the INFJ stops pretending to be social, they often say yes to things they don't want to do. They agree to plans out of guilt. They accept invitations to avoid disappointing someone. They smile and nod, even when their entire body wants rest and quiet. But when they finally stop pretending, something changes. They start saying no, clearly, calmly, and without guilt. This shift is one of the most powerful moments in an INFJ's journey. Because for years, they've trained themselves to be available. To say yes when others ask. To act social even when they're exhausted. They did this to keep relationships smooth and avoid tension. Now they choose differently. When an invitation comes in, they ask themselves, do I want to do this? Not, will they be upset? Not, what will people think? Just, do I have the energy? Does this feel right? If the answer is no, they say no, no long explanations. No fake excuses. Just a clear message that their time and energy matter too. This can be hard at first. The INFJ may worry that people will take it the wrong way. Some people do. They might call the INFJ flaky or distant. But the INFJ knows this response is part of the problem. People who expect constant access often don't understand boundaries. With time, the INFJ stops caring how others react. They're not being rude, they're being honest. And they've learned that saying yes when you mean no is a kind of self-betrayal. Turning down invitations also helps the INFJ protect their emotional space. They no longer waste hours in places where they feel disconnected. They stop forcing themselves to smile through awkward or shallow conversations. They avoid situations that drain them for days afterward. Instead, they give that time back to themselves. They rest. They think. They read. They walk alone. They create. These aren't escapes, they're healing. They help the INFJ return to a calmer, truer version of who they are. This doesn't mean the INFJ says no to everything. It means they say yes only when it feels right. And when they do show up, it's real. It's not fake energy or forced smile. It's present, intentional, and honest. People who really care about the INFJ learn to respect this. They stop taking the no personally. And in return, they get the best version of the INFJ, one who is rested, focused, and fully present. When the INFJ stops pretending to be social, they start honoring their time. And that means turning down what doesn't feel right, without guilt, without apology. Thing number 3, they shorten conversations and avoid small talk. When INFJs stop pretending to be social, one of the first things people notice is how little they say. They don't talk just to fill space anymore. They don't ask how the weather is, or comment on weekend plans just to keep a conversation going. They speak when it matters and stay quiet when it doesn't. This might seem rude to some people, especially those who rely on casual chatter to bond. But for the INFJ, small talk is more than boring, it's draining. It forces them to play a part they no longer want to play. Before, they used to try. They would nod, smile, and ask polite questions. They would pretend to care about gossip or meaningless updates just to stay friendly. But that wasn't connection, it was survival. And now, they're done with it. Now they choose silence over filler words. If a conversation isn't meaningful or genuine, they keep it short. They may offer a polite hello or a quick answer, but they don't open the door to anything deeper unless it feels real. This can make casual relationships fade. People who are used to chatting with the INFJ in passing may feel the distance. They may say, "You've changed." And in a way, that's true. The INFJ has stopped pretending that every conversation needs to happen. Instead, they save their words for people who truly listen. People who ask deeper questions. People who don't get uncomfortable with quiet moments. When those people speak, the INFJ opens up. But only then. This change doesn't come from anger. It comes from exhaustion. INFJs have spent years trying to meet everyone where they are. Now they're trying to meet themselves where they need to be. By shortening conversations and skipping small talk, they create space for real connection. And that's what they've wanted all along. If someone can't accept this quiet version of the INFJ, then maybe the connection wasn't real to begin with. When the INFJ stops pretending to be social, every word becomes more honest, and every silence becomes more peaceful. Thing number 4, they invest in solitude or select relationships. INFJs don't hate people. They don't avoid others out of bitterness. What they avoid is surface-level living, relationships that take more than they give. When they stop pretending to be social, they stop pouring energy into everyone equally. Instead, they focus on two things: solitude and a few real relationships. Solitude becomes sacred. It's not a lonely place. It's a space where they can hear their own thoughts again. After years of trying to meet social expectations, the INFJ finally has the time to reflect, rest, and reset. They may spend more time reading, writing, walking, or just sitting in silence. These moments bring peace that no crowd ever could. This time alone isn't about hiding. It's about rebuilding. The INFJ looks at what drained them. They think about the kinds of connections they've been part of and which ones felt real. They begin to understand that not all interaction is connection. Not all friendship is mutual. That's when the shift happens. Instead of keeping up with a wide circle of social contacts, they narrow their focus. They stop replying to every message. They stop saying yes to everyone. And they start choosing carefully who they give their time to. They invest in a few relationships that feel real, ones where they can be fully themselves without pretending. These people don't need the INFJ to be on all the time. They don't need constant updates or big conversations. They just show up with quiet presence, deep trust, and honest care. In those spaces, the INFJ begins to thrive. They speak more freely. They laugh more deeply. They feel safe enough to open up because they're not performing anymore. This change also brings freedom. The INFJ no longer feels guilty for not being everywhere, for not checking in with everyone, or for not maintaining connections that don't feel good. They have learned that the right relationships don't demand constant attention, they allow space. They also stop chasing after people who make them feel unseen. They stop reaching out to friends who never reply, or giving energy to people who only come around when it benefits them. Instead, they choose peace over people-pleasing. This selective way of living makes room for clarity. The INFJ doesn't feel pulled in every direction anymore. They know who matters and why, and that focus gives them strength. They still care deeply. They still show up. But now it's intentional. When the INFJ stops pretending to be social, they don't go into hiding, they go home to themselves. And from that grounded place, they build better, deeper, and more peaceful connections. Thing number 5. They become honest about their needs. NFJs are used to hiding their true needs. They don't want to seem difficult. They don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So they push down their discomfort, fake smiles, and pretend they're fine, even when they're not. But when they stop pretending to be social, all of that changes. They stop lying about what they need. They become honest, calm, clear. They start saying things like, "I don't have the energy for that today," or "I need time alone right now," or even, "I'd rather not talk about that right now." These statements may seem simple, but for the INFJ, they're huge. In the past, they would have swallowed those feelings. They would have nodded along or said maybe when they meant no. They would have stayed longer than they wanted to, or pushed through a phone call when their mind was screaming for silence. Now they're done pretending. This honesty doesn't make them mean. It makes them real. It tells others, "I have limits too." And people who respect that honesty become part of the INFJ's trusted circle. The rest fall away. Being honest about their needs also helps the INFJ feel more balanced. They no longer carry the weight of false connection. They no longer drain themselves for the sake of keeping up appearances. They simply state what's true and let that be enough. This kind of honesty also helps INFJs build healthier relationships. People know where they stand. There are no hidden feelings, no guessing games. The INFJ becomes easier to understand, not harder, because they're finally speaking from a place of truth. Some people won't like this shift. They'll say the INFJ has changed. And they have. They have changed into someone who no longer hides behind politeness. Someone who values honesty over approval. This honesty isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. The INFJ speaks it in soft, steady ways, but the effect is powerful. They feel more in control, more at peace, more connected to their own needs. When the INFJ stops pretending to be social, their honesty becomes their new language. And from that place, everything starts to make more sense. Thing number 6, they regain energy and emotional clarity. When an INFJ stops pretending to be social, something powerful begins to happen inside them. Slowly, their energy returns. The fog in their mind starts to clear. They feel calm instead of overwhelmed, focused instead of scattered. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. This return of energy is one of the clearest signs that they've made the right choice. Before, they were running on empty, giving their time to too many people, saying yes when they meant no, and feeling emotionally drained every step of the way. Now they wake up with more strength. They have space in their day that isn't filled with forced interaction. They finally breathe again. This extra energy changes how they live. They're more patient, more present, more creative. They can think clearly because they're not constantly recovering from social overload. The noise is gone, and what's left is focus. Emotionally, things shift too. They stop second-guessing themselves. They no longer wonder if they're being too quiet, too distant, or too odd. They feel more confident in who they are, and they stop apologizing for needing space. That clarity helps them build a life that feels more honest. This is when the INFJ starts doing more of what matters. They return to the books, art, ideas, or projects that used to inspire them. They reconnect with their purpose. They might even begin healing old emotional wounds, because now they finally have the energy to face them. They also begin to notice which people bring them peace and which don't. With that awareness, they make better choices about who to trust and how much to give. This leads to stronger boundaries, healthier relationships, and less regret. They're no longer caught in the cycle of doing things just to fit in or avoid judgment. They're no longer pretending to enjoy what they never did. They're living in truth, and that truth is healing them. This clarity also helps them become more grounded. The ups and downs of life still happen, but they're not as shaken by them. They have a stronger sense of self, built through quiet time and emotional honesty. The INFJ doesn't need to explain this change. It shows in their calm, in their eyes, in their choices. When they stop pretending to be social, they don't just pull back, they rise up. Clearer, stronger, and more fully themselves. When the INFJ stops pretending to be social, it's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. It's not rejection of others, it's reconnection with self. Every step they take away from forced interaction is a step toward peace. They begin to disappear from events that don't serve them. They turn down invitations with honesty. They let go of small talk. They protect their time, invest in true connection, speak their needs, and rediscover their energy. This transformation can confuse people who only knew the polite, people-pleasing version of the INFJ. But those who take the time to understand will see the truth. The INFJ isn't closing off. They're opening up to the kind of life that actually fits. And if you're an INFJ, know this: it's okay to stop pretending. It's okay to protect your space. The people who matter will adjust. The rest were never really listening. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And once you make that choice, your real life begins. This is what happens when the INFJ stops pretending to be social.